Thunder and lightning rage over the bar that sits just 3 miles past the county line, out on rural Highway 7. The parking lot is gravel. The paint is chipped and missing from most of the walls. A neon sign flickers off and on, barely bright enough to fight the cloudy gloom. A beater pickup truck sits in the parking lot, which is quickly turning from packed gravel into a huge mud puddle with rocks in it. High above, deep in the clouds, a dog howls with fear. Inside the bar, the TV blares the news headlines silently across the bottom of the screen as old country classics echo out of the tinny speakers of the ancient jukebox shoved in the far corner. A lone man, haggard and mean-looking, sits at the bar sipping whiskey from the bottom of the well, while the bartender leans his back to the bar and studies the news running across the silent TV.
"Science finds hell,"
the bartender says, echoing what the news scroll is reporting.
"How's that even possible?" "My thoughts exactly,"
the lone man says.
"It's like a vegetarian stumbling across a barbecue joint. So what? Ain't nothing gonna come of it because those are two different worlds."
The bartender looks over his shoulder at the lone man and frowns.
"What are you talking about?"
the bartender says.
"Science and religion,"
the lone man explains.
"Oil and water. Heat and cream." "Heat and cream?"
the bartender asks.
"You can't make whipped cream with warm cream,"
the lone man says.
"Everyone knows that."
The lone man downs his rot gut and holds out the empty glass, then turns it upside down.
"Switching to beer, Leo,"
the lone man says.
"Pour me a glass of your best high life. Hell, pour me a pitcher. I'm in the mood to do a little drinking."
The lone man chuckles.
"Science finds hell,"
the lone man says, still chuckling.
"They didn't have to look far. Been on this here earth for a good long while, if you ask me."
Leo, the bartender, sets the pitcher of high life down in front of the lone man.
"Here you go, Chet,"
Leo says.
$12.50. "Put it on my tab,"
The lone man, Chet, says, then snaps his fingers.
"A glass, please." "No can do, Chet,"
the bartender says and takes the pitcher back.
"Missy has been up my ass about bar tabs this week. Gonna need you to either pay your full tab or pay for this pitcher. Your choice." $12.50 it is,"
Chet says and digs into his pockets for random bills and loose change. He slaps everything he has on the bar.
"There you go." "That 5 is wet,"
Leo says.
"Why do you have a wet 5 in your pocket but all the rest are dry? Why is it wet?" "Another mystery, just like science finding hell,"
Chet says and shrugs as Leo counts out the money.
2 bits over."
Leo says.
"Keep it."
Chet says and points at the pitcher.
"My beer, sir." "Asshole,"
Leo says and sets the pitcher back in front of Chet, then fetches a semi-clean glass from under the bar. Chet pours himself a beer, then looks around the bar.
"What?"
Leo snaps.
"Salt.
Chet says.
For the foam." "Are you serious?
Leo asks.
Since when have you put salt in your beer?"
Chet frowns, then scrunches up his face.
"Hard to say,"
he responds.
"Just give me the salt, will you?"
Leo hesitates, then grabs a dusty old salt shaker from its spot next to a dusty bottle of cognac.
"Here,"
Leo says, handing the shaker to Chet.
"Knock yourself out." "Don't mind if I do,"
Chet says and sprinkles salt over the foam. Then he takes a sip and smacks his lips.
Savory. "You're a real fucking weird,"
Leo starts to say, but is interrupted by the door suddenly being opened.
"Jesus Christ!"
A huge man shouts as he races into the bar. The storm outside is worse, and the wind nearly rips the door off its hinges as the man struggles to yank it closed.
"Holy fuck! It's literally raining cats and fucking dogs out there!"
The man yells.
"You're off early, Billy,"
Leo says and pours a bourbon, neat, then sets it on the bar before the huge man even has a chance to shake the water from his ball cap.
"Thanks, Leo,"
Billy says, crossing to the bar. He lifts the glass, tips it at Leo and Chet, then downs the bourbon. He slams the glass onto the bar and shakes his head.
"Double it up, Leo." "That kind of day?"
Leo asks. Billy points up at the muted television and sets his bulk down on a bar stool.
Fuck yeah, it's that kind of day. You see what's happening on the news? And they even reporting half the shit I've seen. Like what?
Chet asks, sipping his beer.
Did you dipshits not hear me when I came in?
Billy asks, then nods to Leo as a glass half filled with bourbon is set in front of him.
It is literally raining cats and dogs.
Leo raises an eyebrow. Chet gives a dismissive snort before sipping more beer.
Can't you hear that?
Billy asks and points at the ceiling. Soft thumps are coming from the roof.
That's hail,
Leo says.
Big hail,
Chet says.
Sure it is,
Billy says.
If hail had tails and could beg for treats. Bullshit,
Leo responds.
Go see for your own damn self then,
Billy says.
I think I will,
Leo responds and walks out from behind the bar.
And if you're full of shit, which he is,
Chet interjects.
then don't play in that damn Tammy Wynette song.
Leo finishes.
And if I ain't full of shit,
Billy asks.
free drinks for everyone.
Chet announces and holds up his glass.
Free drinks for Billy.
Leo says.
Deal.
Leo goes to the front door and shoves it open against the storm. Rain and wind rip through the gap and tear at Leo's bar apron. He sticks his head outside, then pulls it back in quick and yanks the door shut.
Fuck.
He whispers, then shakes his head and looks at the two men seated at the bar.
He ain't lying. Cats and dogs are falling from the sky.
Leo glances up at the ceiling and winces with every soft thud.
Makes sense.
Chet says.
This is what happens when you fuck around and find hell. None of this makes sense,
Leo says, still wincing at the soft thuds from above.
It does if you fuck around and find hell.
Chet says and lifts his glass.
That's science.
He laughs hard. The two others don't join in.
They melting?
Billy asks, turning his attention from Chet to look at Leo.
What?
Leo asks.
The cats and dogs,
Billy says.
when they hit the ground, are they melting? Yeah,
Leo says quietly.
it's pretty fucked up.
He slowly makes his way back behind the bar, then just stares at the rack of clean glasses waiting to be put away. Almost robotically, Leo picks up and puts away each glass until the rack is empty. Then he finally looks over at Billy and shakes his head.
They was hitting the pavement like sacks of wet cement,
Leo says.
I saw a tabby cat burst open. Then it just turned to red goo and spread out in the gravel and water. Yeah,
Billy says.
I ain't seen nothing like it.
Leo says and looks over at Chet.
You should take a look. It's insane. I'm good.
Chet says and downs his glass of beer before refilling it. He adds salt, then sucks the foam from the top and smacks his lips.
That's the stuff. You were saying you seen some shit today, Billy?
Leo asks, rolling his eyes at Chet. Billy nods and takes a sip of his bourbon.
You know Amy Everett?
Billy asks.
Tall chick with the rack?
Leo replies.
That's Amy Herbert.
Chet says.
Amy Everett's got the lazy eye in the rack. Oh, right. Yeah, sure.
Leo says.
She walked in 2 hours late this morning with her underwear on the outside of her pants.
Billy says. That gets Chet's attention, and the man swivels on his bar stool to face Billy.
You don't say.
Chet asks.
Keep talking. She had a G-string flossing her jeans when she walked through the door,
Billy says.
and a sports bra over her blouse. She came right in and went to her desk like nothing was wrong. Who finally told her she had her skivvies on the outside?
Chet asks.
Laura Connor,
Billy says.
the office manager. Know what happened next? Nope.
Chet says and sips his beer.
That's why we're listening to you tell your tale, dumb shit. She stood up and slapped the shit out of Laura.
Billy says.
Just 1, 2, 3. And I don't mean back and forth from cheek to cheek. Nah, she lifted that palm and gave Laura's left cheek 3 strikes hard enough to split skin. Well, damn.
Chet says.
You got other stories? This one ain't done.
Billy says.
That's so.
Chet responds and taps the bar.
That we are gonna need a couple more pictures. Leo? 2 pitchers of high life on Billy here in honor of his terrible, horrible, no fucking good day. He drinks free.
Leo says.
Not you, asshole. It's fine.
Billy says when Leo gives him a look.
Put them on my tab. Sure thing.
Leo says and goes to fetch the pitchers.
Hey!
Chet almost shouts.
I thought Missy didn't want tabs no more. I said Missy has been up my ass about bar tabs.
Leo says as he pours the beer.
Billy's ain't one of them. You fuckers want to hear this shit or what?
Billy snaps and takes a deep breath.
Sorry. It got so much worse that it's hard to reconcile. Do tell,
Chet says and moves 4 bar stools closer, so he's seated right next to Billy.
Unless it's all too traumatizing for you. If that's the case, then I'm happy to sit here and drink beer with you in silence. Well, understandably, Laura starts to scream and cry.
Billy says, continuing his story.
She ran her pear-shaped self right to the ladies' room. So Hal comes out of his office shouting to know what the hell is going on. Amy doesn't like that. She shoves one of the desks, I think it was Mike's, all the way across the office. It just went sliding as if it was made of paper and the floor was ice.
Billy sips his bourbon, then swallows hard.
Hal is yelling at Amy to calm down, and that's just making Amy madder and madder, until she,
Billy stops talking and stares sightlessly at the bottles lined up behind the bar.
Billy?
Leo asks.
Until what, goddammit?
Chet snaps.
No need for suspense, Billy. Out with it.
Billy swallows hard.
Amy walks right up to Hal and punches him in the face,
Billy says, and downs his bourbon, then taps the glass. Leo fills it immediately.
I can still hear the crunch of bone. It was like she hit an unripe melon, but so much worse. Was Hal all right?
Leo asks.
No, Leo. Hal was not all right,
Billy says.
That crazy woman shattered his fucking face. He hit the deck and blood was everywhere. Hal was screaming for help. Then Amy took a stapler from the closest desk and crouched over Hal. She was going to bash his brains in if I hadn't stopped her. How'd you stop her?
Leo asks.
Tackled her like I was back in high school,
Billy says.
Just wrapped her up and took her down.
Billy turns his head, so what little light the bar has can catch the puncture marks on his left cheek.
Took a few good licks myself. What the fuck are those?
Chet asks, leaning in close for a better look.
Did tiny little vampires attack you or something? Staples,
Billy says.
Amy opened the stapler up and went at me.
Billy swallows again.
So I gave her a hard wallop upside her head, and that was that.
Billy says. Leo and Chet share a look, then return their attention to Billy.
How do you mean that was that?
Leo asks.
You kill her?
Chet asks.
Jesus Christ, Chet.
Leo says.
What?
Chet protests.
Look at the guy. He gives me a hard wallop, and he'd kill me before my body can hit the floor. Maybe.
Billy says. His entire body shudders.
Possibly. She was still breathing when the paramedics arrived. What about Hal?
Leo asks.
He was still breathing too.
Billy says.
Not well if his face was as busted in as you say it was,
Chet says, and nods at one of the pitchers.
May I? Knock yourself out,
Billy says. Chet does, and fills his glass quickly.
Then what?
Chet asks as he sets the glass down and hunts around.
Where'd the salt go?
Billy and Leo share a look. Leo sighs.
Here.
Leo says and hands Chet a salt shaker.
Why'd you move it?
Chet asks.
I thought you were done.
Leo says.
Drinking? Does that look like I'm done drinking?
Chet snaps.
Fool.
Chet shakes out a couple of dashes of salt and the excess foam on top of his beer dissipates. Then he drinks half the beer down, belches, and smiles at Billy.
Well, what happened after that? Everyone get to go home?
Chet asks.
No,
Billy says.
Quigley pulls up about 5 minutes after the paramedics. Sheriff and not a deputy?
Leo asks.
Why didn't he send Kevin or Tanya or one of them? I'm sure Quigley's got other things to deal with.
Chet and Leo glance at the TV, then go back to looking at Billy. Billy just stares at his drink.
Laura's like Quigley's first or second cousin,
Billy says.
She called him from the ladies' room after getting bitch slapped by Amy. Bet he didn't like Amy hitting his kin, did he?
Chet comments and refills his beer.
You got enough salt there, Chet?
Leo asks.
Something is off,
Chet says.
I think your tap lines need cleaning. You'd know,
Leo says.
Laura comes out of the ladies' room and starts spouting off,
Billy says, ignoring Chet and Leo's exchange.
She's yelling and yelling. What's she yelling about?
Chet asks. He sips his beer and grimaces.
Still needs more salt. Let the man finish his story,
Leo says to Chet.
And easy on the damn salt. I just filled that shaker last month. Laura's yelling about how we all tried to kill Amy and how I...
Billy swallows some more, then coughs a little. He clears his throat, takes a drink of bourbon, then continues.
She looks at Quigley, who was busy interviewing all of us. Then she points at me and shouts, "He did this!" She points at you,
Leo asks. A particularly loud thud comes from above, and Leo glances at the ceiling.
What did you do?
Chet asks.
Nothing,
Billy says.
I looked at Quigley and shook my head. He'd already spoken to me, so he knew my story. Others backed me up that I had to tackle Amy. Yeah, but why is Laura pointing at you and saying you did it?
Chet asks.
I don't know,
Billy shouts. He shakes his head and downs the rest of his bourbon. Leo fills it back up for him.
I just don't know. Quigley get her sorted out?
Leo asks.
No,
Billy replies flatly. Chet and Leo wait for Billy to continue. When he doesn't, Chet leans over and says,
And then what happened? Quigley gets up in my face and asks me what I did to Amy.
Billy continues.
Then he agrees with his cousin and says I am the one that slapped Laura, even though everyone saw it was Amy who did it. Family, man,
Chet says.
Blood helps blood around here. What the shit does that even mean, Chet?
Leo snaps at him. Chet shrugs.
So Quigley is in my face and I'm not liking it so much,
Billy says.
He's telling me to put my hands behind my back, but I do not want to put my hands behind my back. I knew right then that if he cuffed me, I was as good as dead.
Chet's glass is halfway to his lips, but he pauses. Then he sets the glass down and gives Billy a hard stare.
Billy?
Chet asks.
What did you do? I protected myself,
Billy says.
I grabbed Quigley by the throat and shoved him as far away from me as I could. Then when the others came at me, I just started swinging. I was throwing wild punches left and right all the way to the office's front door. Hold on now,
Leo says.
Are you telling us you fought your way out of your office? That's what I'm telling you.
Billy replies.
You fought all your coworkers?
Leo asks.
And the sheriff too, sounds like.
Chet says, still staring at Billy.
How bad you hurt them, Billy?
Billy shrugs.
Billy? How bad did you hurt them?
Chet asks again.
I watched you play ball back when you was a kid. I know how hard you can hit. Even now that you've gone all soft from being married and having kids. They was all right when I left,
Billy says after a long pause.
Most of them were breathing. Jesus,
Leo mutters. Lightning flashes outside so bright that even through the single, narrow window the bar has, it's almost blinding. A crack of thunder booms out so loud it could split the universe in two. Chet says, eyes still on Billy.
I should have stayed home and drank. I took Quigley's cruiser,
Billy says.
Keys were in it, and it was closer than my pickup. You stole the sheriff's car?
Leo asks.
I didn't see it in the parking lot. I had to go home first,
Billy says.
Check on Maria and the kids. The storm had gotten worse, and I didn't like how the light was. Twister light, if you know what I mean. But the family was fine, I'm sure, right?
Leo asks.
No,
Billy says.
They weren't fine, Leo. No one is fine right now. There is no fucking fine.
Billy jumps up from his seat and the bar stool goes flying out behind him and crashes into an empty table, knocking over a couple of chairs like bowling pins. With one of his huge hands, Billy reaches across the bar and grabs Leo by the shirt collar. He yanks him close and presses his nose to the bartenders.
I was so worried about them, but when I got inside, all Maria could do was ask me question after question.
Billy says, his eyes blinking rapidly, his breath ragged.
What happened? Why aren't you at work? Whose blood is that all over you? What are you doing? Let me go. Stop it, Billy. Billy, stop. You're hurting me. Billy, no, Billy. No, Billy. No, Billy, no.
Billy shoves Leo away and looks behind him. He sees the stool across the bar, then just grabs the nearest one and sits back down.
Give me the bottle,
Billy says.
Sure thing,
Leo replies and slides the bourbon across the bar to Billy. Then he takes a couple of slow steps back and eases his phone out of his pocket.
Billy?
Chet asks.
What did you do to Maria? Me?
Billy laughs.
You think I'd hurt the love of my life? I didn't do a damn thing to that woman. What happened to her, she did to herself. Okay,
Chet says, keeping Billy's attention as Leo dials 911.
What did she do to herself?
Billy snorts and laughs.
A lot,
he says.
Oh, she did a lot.
Then Billy fixes Chet with a cold look and grins. The grin slowly reaches his eyes and mixes with the madness.
She snapped her own neck,
Billy continues.
Then she threw herself against the wall and told me to get her the kitchen knife. And not the cheap one she leaves out on the counter in that damn block, but the good knife in the drawer. I'm a good husband, so I did what she asked. I know how to listen. You got your wife the kitchen knife she asked for,
Chet says.
Even after she snapped her own neck? Women,
Billy says and shrugs.
They are hard to figure out.
Chet glances at Leo, but Leo shakes his head and slides his phone back in his pocket.
All right, Billy,
Chet says.
I'd rather not ask this, but are the kids okay? Kids are fucking fine,
Billy says.
They're out in the minivan. In the parking lot?
Leo asks and whips his head toward the front door.
They're fine,
Billy says.
With the storm and...
Leo tries to continue.
They're fine.
Billy shouts and throws the bottle of bourbon at Leo's head. The bartender manages to duck in time, but the bottle collides with half a dozen others, sending glass and liquor exploding everywhere.
Gonna play me some Tammy Wynette,
Billy says as he stands and walks off to the dark corner where the old jukebox sits. Leo grabs a towel and tries to wipe as much liquor from himself as he can, while Chet keeps an eye on Billy.
911 was busy?
Chet asks out of the corner of his mouth and smiles and nods when Billy glances back at the bar.
Yeah,
Leo says, picking glass out of his hair.
You think one of us should go check on those kids?
Chet asks.
I'm afraid to go see what's out there,
Leo replies.
I don't think it'll be good. No, me neither,
Chet says. Country music blares from the speakers.
That's not Tammy Wynette,
Chet says.
I've never heard that song before.
Billy does a quick shuffle with his feet, then spins and points at Leo and Chet.
Then she said I needed to slice her face off.
Billy shouts over the music.
So I did, because I'm a good husband and I listen.
Chet lifts his glass in salute and sips from his beer.
You still got your scattergun back there?
Chet asks Leo.
Got my hand on it right now,
Leo says.
What are you thinking? I'm thinking I'd rather not be Billy's next story,
Chet says.
She screamed at me to keep cutting.
Billy continues to shout from across the room.
I did. Cutting and slicing and cutting and slicing until not a pinch of skin was left on her. She has never been so beautiful.
Billy sprints toward them, and Leo brings the sawed-off shotgun out from underneath the bar. Billy skids to a halt and frowns.
What the fuck is that for?
Billy asks.
All I was gonna do was see if y'all wanted to go out to the van and see Maria's new body. She has never been so beautiful. I'm sure she is,
Chet says and stands up. Without taking his eyes off Billy, he scoots down the bar, then reaches back over it and flips a switch. The speakers cut off and the music goes away. leaving a quiet ringing in the place.
What the fuck did you do that for?
Billy snarls at Chet.
That song was for me. They picked it for me. For me! You fucking drunk ass bitch!
Billy races at Chet. Leo squeezes the trigger. The shotgun would have been deafening, but a harsh crack of thunder from above steals its glory. Then silence fills the bar.
Oh fuck. What did I do?
Leo whimpers after a couple of seconds.
What you had to?
Chet says. He inches towards Billy's motionless, face-down body.
Hey, Leo? Yeah, Chet?
Leo replies.
How's about you take your finger off that trigger?
Chet suggests.
I'm well within that spread, and I'd rather not catch a bag full of buckshot if I can help it. Right,
Leo says, and eases his finger to the outside of the trigger guard.
Be careful. Careful is the only plan I got,
Chet says as he stands over Billy. Blood flows out from under Billy's torso and pools about the still man's body. Chet circles Billy a few times, then finally crouches down and pokes Billy right in the ass cheek. Nothing.
He ain't breathing,
Leo says.
I can see that, damn it.
Chet says.
Try 911 again. What for? He's dead, right?
Leo responds. Chet looks up at Leo and frowns.
Yeah, he's fucking dead, asshole. That's why you're gonna try 911 again. We got a dead man here on the floor.
Chet trails off as he looks over at the front door. He takes a deep breath and lets it out.
And Billy's family may be out in that minivan of theirs. We know Maria isn't doing so hot if what Billy said is true. So I'm thinking we call in the professionals to take care of this shit.
Leo nods and tries 911 again. He winces and tosses the phone onto the bar.
You gotta hear this,
Leo says, and taps the speaker button.
Is what you two are?
A shrill yet deep voice echoes out of Leo's phone.
Just two lost little bitches, stuck in that dive bar like a pair of perpetual losers. Pathetic. That's what you two are. Pathetic. You killed the one good thing in that bar. Billy knew how to listen. Billy knew what needed to be done when it needed to be done. What have you two accomplished today? Drinking and pissing? Yeah, that sounds about right. You think anyone is going to come help you losers? Do you? Why would they? You two are nothing but fucking pathetic pieces of...
Leo kills the call. He doesn't pick his phone back up. He just leaves it there on the bar despite the fact that it's sitting in a pool of condensation that's dripped down from one of the beer pitchers.
That was 911?
Chet asks.
Yeah.
Leo says. Chet stands up and moves away from Billy's body. Then he glances toward the front door again.
One of us should check on the kids,
Chet says.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Leo replies.
No way am I going out there. Not in a fucking storm where it's raining cats and dogs. They could still be alive,
Chet says.
Who the fuck are you?
Leo snaps.
Why do you care about a couple of white trash kids, huh? Since when do you grow a conscience or a heart? Calm the fuck down, Leo,
Chet says.
You don't know jack shit about me. I knew you were a loser in school, so they kicked you out.
Leo says.
Then you were a loser in the army and they kicked you out of that too. You're such a fucking loser that they'd probably kick you out of hell.
Chet nods, then glances past Leo to the TV. There's a scene of literal fire raining down on some coastal town, while a massive tsunami grows and grows out on the horizon. The camera cuts back to the anchor woman. She has her head in her hands and is sobbing while a man stands behind her with a machete. Then it goes to commercial, and Chet focuses back on Leo.
Set that shotgun down,
Chet says. Leo looks at his hands like he's surprised by the sight of the weapon. Then he smiles wide at Chet.
You know what?
Leo says, and aims the shotgun at Chet.
I don't think so. What you doing, Leo?
Chet asks.
I'm listening,
Leo says.
Don't you hear it?
Chet shrugs and casually reaches behind him until his hand finds the back of a chair.
Sure, I hear it,
Chet says.
I'll just have a seat right here so we can listen together. Yeah,
Leo says in a manic tone filling his voice.
Sit down, you fucking drunk loser. Gonna do just that,
Chet says, and shifts his weight to his back foot, as he drags the chair closer to him. Then he lifts it and flings it at Leo. The shotgun goes off, and wood explodes everywhere as most of the chair is obliterated. Chet feels a sting across his left cheek, but ignores the pain as he hurries to the bar where Leo is frantically trying to pull the spent shells from the shotgun. Chet lurches over the bar top and snatches the shotgun from Leo's grip, then throws it across the bar. It collides with the jukebox, shattering the heavy plastic front.
Fucking loser!
Leo yells and grabs for Chet's throat. Chet slaps Leo's hands away, picks up the pitcher of beer that's still full, and slams it into the side of Leo's head. The bartender grunts, then collapses. Chet doesn't waste a moment and hurries around the bar. He drops down, flips Leo over onto his stomach, yanks Leo's hands behind his back, then looks about for something to tie them with. He sees a roll of duct tape sitting next to the soft drink dispenser. In seconds, he has Leo's wrists wrapped with enough duct tape to keep a gorilla still.
All right now, Leo,
Chet says, and hauls the man up onto his feet. He walks him out from behind the bar and sits him down on a bar stool.
I think we should have ourselves a little chat, don't you?
Leo, dazed and bleeding, doesn't respond. He slumps over the bar, his chest resting against the rail as his cheek falls into some spilled beer.
Mistake,
Leo mutters.
Damn right that was a mistake,
Chet says, giving the back of Leo's head a hard smack.
I told you that you don't know shit about me. You loser,
Leo says. He starts to wriggle his wrists, but Chet gives him another hard smack and he stops.
Questions,
Chet says.
Why'd y'all go crazy on me? I'm a good listener,
Leo says.
You need to be a good listener too.
Thunder erupts above, and the entire building shakes.
This have something to do with that?
Chet asks, and points up at the TV.
Hell talking to you? That it, Leo? Hell has been talking to all of us,
Leo says.
but we weren't listening. Now we got it. No choice no more. Gotta be good listeners?
Chet asks.
Yes.
Leo exclaims, and tries to lift his head up from the bar top. Chet slams it back down.
You stay right there, Leo.
Chet says.
We still got some talking to do.
Another explosion of thunder rocks the building. Chet frowns as dust drifts down from the ceiling.
I need a drink,
Chet says. He moves back behind the bar and fetches the duct tape. Then he walks back out and wraps tape around Leo's legs and arms, securing him to the bar stool he's sitting on. With the threat managed for the moment, Chet returns to behind the bar and pours himself a fresh pitcher of beer. Without hesitation, Chet grabs the salt shaker and shakes until the foam is gone. Then he drinks straight from the pitcher and doesn't stop until it's drained dry. With a loud belch and a wipe of his mouth, Chet drops the empty pitcher on the floor, then leans his elbows on the bar and looks at Leo.
My problem is I ain't never been good at listening,
Chet says.
So whatever hell is spouting, it's falling on deaf ears. You'll listen eventually,
Leo says.
They all will. They? Who is they?
Chet asks.
People.
Leo says.
All the people will listen, and then we will be right. How you fucking figure that?
Chet asks.
There's nothing right about any of this. Not with you, not with Billy, not with the fucking pound dumping its strays on the roof, not with Billy's family, not with the whole fucking world.
Chet points at the TV. It's back from commercial, and the man is trying to chop the anchorwoman's head off with the machete. But his aim is terrible, and he's mostly mutilating her skull and shoulders.
Ain't nothing right about hacking some woman's head off on fucking live TV. There definitely ain't nothing right when no one tries to stop the motherfucker. You just have to listen,
Leo says.
Yeah, well, we've already been through that,
Chet says.
Listening ain't my strong suit.
There is one last massive crack of thunder. Chet winces at the pressure the sound creates inside the bar. It's like all the air has been sucked out of the place and put back in a split second later. Chet works his jaw a few times until his ears pop.
It stopped,
Chet says after a couple of seconds.
I don't hear no thuds anymore. All dogs go to hell,
Leo says and laughs. Chet smacks him again, hard.
Shut the fuck up,
Chet says, and turns his attention to the single thin window. Sunlight is filtering through the dirt and grime that coats the pane. While staring at the front of the bar and the sunlight fighting its way through the nasty window pane, a thought hits Chet. It is not a thought he enjoys, but something in him says that the thought ain't gonna go away anytime soon unless he does something.
Stay there,
Chet says and walks to the front door.
I'll be right back. No, you won't,
Leo yells as Chet opens the front door and walks out into the parking lot. The gravel is barely visible under the several inches of rain and dog and cat goo that fills the lot. Chet turns his head and looks at his pickup truck. The windshield is obliterated, and the cab and hood are caved in from the impacts of the dogs and cats. The faded paint is coated with goo stains. The passenger side mirror is on the ground, half submerged in yuck.
Shit,
Chet says.
Won't be going nowhere in that.
His attention turns to the minivan parked opposite his pickup truck. The windows are all steamed up.
Holy shit,
Chet says, and sloshes through the inches of liquid over to the minivan.
Someone's still alive.
He grabs the handle to the side door, pulls hard, and slides the door wide open. The smell hits him first. Shit and blood. Chet's eyes see the back of Maria's skinned head as her body rests in the passenger seat. But Chet's attention is immediately pulled away from the grotesque sight to a sight that makes his blood run colder. Colder than it has run all day, which is saying something. The two child seats in the middle of the van are coated in blood.
Ah, shit,
Chet says. Then he looks at the windows again. Condensation drips down the glass.
Hello?
Chet calls into the minivan.
Anybody in here?
There's a sound from the back. Chet leans into the minivan and looks toward the back seat and the cargo area. He nearly pisses himself when he sees two blue eyes peering out from under matted blonde curls as they stare at him from over the edge of the back seat.
Hey there,
Chet says, and slowly holds out a hand like you would with a scared dog.
I'm Chet. I'm a friend of your daddy's.
The second the words leave his mouth, he knows they are the wrong thing to say. The eyes and the curls disappear instantly, followed by barely controlled sobs.
No, your daddy ain't gonna hurt you no more,
Chet says.
He's dead now.
The sobs grow louder.
Fuck,
Chet says.
shit, fuck, shit.
He holds his head and turns in a circle, surveying the parking lot as he tries to figure out what to do.
What the fuck do I know about kids?
He mutters to himself. Then he snaps his fingers and runs away from the minivan. He stops halfway to the bar, turns back around, and hurries to the minivan.
Stay right here.
He calls into the van as he closes the sliding door. Then he's off and back to the bar. Bursting through the door, he sees Leo still taped to the bar stool. Except the bar stool is now on the floor, and Leo is trying to roll and wiggle himself over to the shattered jukebox and the shotgun. Only problem is, Billy's corpse is in the way, and Leo has gotten himself stuck. Chet freezes up at the decisions he has before him. He hasn't had to do this much thinking in a long while. He unfreezes, races over and finds the shotgun in the jukebox, removes it, turns, and races to the bar. He grabs a container of maraschino cherries, turns once more and sprints to the front door. Then he pauses, walks back, and kicks Leo in the stomach.
Stop trying to start shit, Leo.
He yells down at the man. Then he's racing out of the bar and back to the minivan. Chet pulls the sliding door open once more and glances toward the cargo hold. No blue eyes or matted curls.
Hey, sweetie,
Chet calls out.
I have something yummy for you. You know those cherries you get on Sundays? I got a whole jar here for you. They taste like sweet, sweet candy.
There's no response, but Chet realizes it's not exactly silent in the minivan. He can hear something from back in the cargo hold, but the back seat is blocking his view. Chet leans out of the minivan and looks toward the rear of the car. Tucking the sawed-off shotgun into his belt, Chet walks to the back of the minivan and grabs the rear hatch's handle. He takes a deep breath and lifts. The cargo hatch slowly rises, and Chet steps back out of its way. The jar of cherries fall from his hand and plops into the goo and muck at his feet.
Jesus, God, no.
Chet mutters as he stares at the nightmare before him. Blue eyes and matted curls are buried face deep in the belly of an infant. Chet turns, and all the beer and liquor of the day joins the muck as he throws up over and over. It all tastes very salty.
Daddy said to listen,
A small voice says around a mouthful.
so I listened. I'm a good girl.
Oh, fuck.
Chet says as he throws up again. The sound of the little girl chewing and chewing makes his stomach cramp even worse. But he's got nothing left, so he stands there, hunched over, his hands on his knees, as he thinks of what to do.
Can't call 911.
Chet says to himself.
They listen.
The little girl says, taking a break from snacking on her infant brother's innards.
They always listen.
Good for them.
Chet says. He stares at the swirling mess at his feet. The maraschino cherry jar bobs in the water and goo and puke.
Okay.
Chet says and stands up. He takes a deep breath as he avoids looking over at the little girl.
Okay. What do I do?
There's a loud crash from inside the bar.
I'll go see what the fuck Leo is up to.
Chet says with fake resolution in his voice.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
He finally steals a look at the little girl and manages not to gag.
I don't think you need a babysitter, so I'll leave you here.
Chet says. The little girl looks up at him, blood dripping down her chin. She smacks her lips.
You're gonna listen soon, too.
The little girl says.
I listened because I'm a good girl. Be a good boy, Chet. Be the best boy you can.
Fucking freak.
Chet mutters and walks off. He slogs his way through the muck to the bar's front door. As his hand touches the door handle, he hears sloshing from behind him. Chet turns slowly and then presses his back to the door.
What the holy fuck?
He whispers.
What did you call me? You fucking drunk bitch!
The little girl shouts. She is wading through the water and dragging the corpse of her brother behind her.
What did you call me? Tell me!
Chet shakes his head and closes his eyes.
No,
He says.
No. This isn't happening. None of this is real. It's all in my head. That's it. I finally broke. Went full nutso like they said I would. Just a matter of time, they said. Fucking hell. I should have listened to them. I should have listened.
Chet's eyes shoot open. The little girl is standing right in front of him, the dead infant dangling from her hand like a rag doll.
Fuck you.
Chet says and laughs.
You almost got me. You had me telling myself to listen.
Chet wags a finger at the little girl.
Nice try, you fucking little freak.
The little girl grins up at Chet, her face coated in blood with bits of intestines.
My daddy said you'd fight,
The little girl says.
but we'll get you soon enough, you fucking drunk bitch.
Chet gives the little girl 2 middle fingers, then turns and grabs the door handle. Before he can pull it open, his legs are knocked out from under him as he feels something slam into the backs of his knees. Chet collapses onto the ground. Gunk and water splash up around him.
What the fuck?
He snarls and tries to stand up. But before he can get his hands under him, his head is rocked and slammed down into the muck.
You have to listen.
The little girl says as she brings her dead brother up over her head for another blow.
Everyone has to listen.
The little girl brings the infant corpse down onto Chet's face, and his head slams back into the muck.
Fucking stop!
Chet yells. His hands shoot up to grab the little girl. Chet grips her throat and squeezes, but his hands are too slippery, and the little girl squirms free. Then she slams the infant corpse down onto Chet's face once more.
Stop that!
Chet roars and finally gets up onto his feet. He brings his right leg back, then kicks out hard, the sole of his boot landing right in the middle of the little girl's face.
Fuck off!
The little girl falls back on her ass. She loses her grip on her brother's corpse, and it floats slowly away on the muck and water. With a bloody face and big blue eyes, the little girl looks up at Chet.
I'm gonna tell my daddy you did that.
The little girl says.
Your daddy is fucking dead.
Chet shouts.
Took a load of buckshot to his...
Chet is yanked backward, dragged inside the bar, then thrown halfway across the room. He slams into a table and cries out as he feels a rib snap. Stunned and hurting, Chet's hands find an upright chair, and he pulls himself up onto it.
Don't you touch my girl!
Billy says from the bar's doorway. Chet shakes his head over and over.
Nah, no way.
Chet says.
You're dead. So fucking what, loser?
Billy snarls.
Yeah, so fucking what, loser?
The little girl says from just behind Billy's legs.
What you gonna do to him, Daddy?
Fuck him up.
Billy says.
Bad.
You gonna make him listen?
The little girl asks.
You know it, baby girl.
Billy says, and quickly closes the distance between him and Chet. Chet is lifted up out of the chair and held a good 2 feet off the floor. His broken rib screams, but that's the least of his worries. Billy has him by the throat and is squeezing hard. Black dots begin to swim in Chet's vision.
You gonna listen now, you fucking drunk bitch?
Billy asks.
You better!
The little girl screeches from beside her daddy's legs. For some reason, Chet's eyes are drawn to the TV. On it, he sees a city on fire. Then it cuts to a mass of people all fighting. Then it cuts to a government official being strung up on a light pole as bloody police officers scream up at him. Then it cuts to, "That's enough, William," a voice says from the bar door. "Put him down."
He ain't listened yet.
Billy shouts. "No, he hasn't," the voice says. "But he will, just as you should." Billy's hands squeeze tighter, and Chet can feel the life leaving his body as the world around him slowly goes dark. "William, are you listening to me?" the voice asks. Air races into Chet's lungs as he lets go and falls to the floor. Coughing and gagging, Chet scrambles backwards on his hands and feet until his back hits the bar wall. The shotgun has fallen from his belt and is at Billy's feet. The huge man bends and picks it up, cracks the breech, pulls out the spent shells, then closes the breech and throws the shotgun behind the bar. "Now, Chester," the voice says.
Chad,
Chet croaks through swollen vocal cords.
no one calls me Chester.
"That may have been Chester," the voice says. "But it is not now."
What the fuck does that mean?
Chet asks. He's looking for the source of the voice, but sees no one in the bar except for Billy and his little girl.
Where's Leo?
Chet asks.
Over there.
Billy says and points at the shattered jukebox.
I needed a snack to get right, be able to listen again.
Chet looks over at the broken jukebox. If he'd had anything left in his stomach, it would have come rushing out. Leo's body was nothing but ribbons. Just tatters of flesh barely held together by tendon and sinew connected to broken bones. Chet's attention is torn from Leo's mangled remains to a shadow moving by the bar door. With a numb resignation, Chet watches the shadow slide across the wall toward the bar. Then the shadow is a man, and the man is pouring a pitcher of beer. "Come, Chester," the shadow man says. He sets the full pitcher of beer on the bar, then reaches back and plucks a glass from the shelf, setting it next to the pitcher. "On the house."
I'm good.
Chet replies.
Gonna rest here for a bit if you don't mind.
"William?" the shadow man says. Billy stomps to Chet and picks him up like he's a toddler. The actual toddler laughs and giggles and points as Chet is carried over to the bar and slammed down onto a stool.
Fucking hell.
Chet gasps, holding his ribs with his left arm. "No need to be so rough, William," the shadow man says to Billy. "Now, you and your girl go have a seat in the corner. I'll call you if I need you."
Can we eat him after you're done?
The little girl asks.
I'm still hungry.
"Don't be a glutton, you little shit," the shadow man says. "Go have a seat, or I'll shove you up your father's ass. Are you listening?"
Yes.
Billy and the little girl say in unison. They turn and walk off to the corner. Billy sets a table and 2 chairs upright. The little girl climbs into one of the chairs, looks at Chet, flips him off, then lowers her hands and looks toward the bar door.
Mommy!
The little girl cries.
Hello, baby.
The skinless body of Billy's wife says as she saunters into the room, her hips swaying like she's walking a red carpet or catwalk.
Miss me?
The little girl starts to get down out of the chair, but Billy grabs her arm and shakes his head.
You have to listen.
Billy says.
Sorry.
The little girl replies.
Come and sit, baby.
Billy says. He reaches out and grabs another chair, then pats the seat as he sets it upright. Such a nice family, the Shadow Man says, and Chet's attention is ripped away from the gory, familial scene.
What is this shit?
Chet asks the Shadow Man. Miller High Life, I believe, the Shadow Man says and checks the tap handle. Yes, it says so right here. Miller High Life.
A champagne of beers!
Billy and his family shout. Is it now? The Shadow Man asks as he pours a glass for Chet. Catchy.
Fuck catchy.
Chet snaps.
What is all of this shit? What the fuck is happening? Who are you? What do you want with me?
I shall answer the last question, since it is the only answer that matters, Chester, the Shadow Man says. I want you to listen, that's all. Just to listen.
Yeah, I have been listening,
Chet says.
I listened to the storm roll in. I listened to fucking cats and dogs falling from the sky. I listened to Billy's fucking story about killing his family.
Don't worry about us, hon. We're just fine.
Billy's wife says.
Like fucking hell you are!
Chet shouts. Don't be rude, the Shadow Man says.
Rude? Are you fucking kidding me?
Chet yells at the Shadow Man. The Shadow Man nods his head at the bar. Drink your beer, Chester. Chet shakes his head over and over. Drink it, the Shadow Man says. It'll make you feel better. You know it will.
Fuck you,
Chet responds.
I said fucking drink the beer!
The Shadow Man roars. The little girl screams and starts crying. Billy reaches over and snaps her neck to shut her up. The little girl's body slumps across the table. Her mother reaches out and pats her head, then shrugs at Billy. Didn't mean to scare the little shit, the Shadow Man says and snaps his fingers. The little girl sits back up and smiles over at the bar, her head lopsided and partially resting on her shoulder. Drink the beer, Chester, the Shadow Man says once more. He slides the full glass closer to Chet. Drink, he insists. Chet tries to study the Shadow Man's features, but there's nothing there. Only shadow. But the more he stares, the more he senses something. He doesn't see it so much as starts to hear it.
This is bullshit,
Chet says and picks up the glass. Then he remembers and looks about.
Salt?
No salt, Chester, the Shadow Man says. You don't need salt with the champagne of beers. Chet sees the shaker and snatches it up before the Shadow Man can stop him. He upends the shaker over the glass, and a good amount of salt pours into his beer before the Shadow Man slaps it away. The shaker flies across the bar and shatters against the wall.
I said no fucking salt, Chester!
The Shadow Man screams. Then he reaches for Chet's glass, but it isn't the first time Chet's had someone try to take a drink from him. Chet lifts the glass and downs the beer in 2 gulps. He slams the empty glass onto the bar and smacks his lips.
I drank the beer like you asked,
Chet says.
Looks like I listened.
That is not listening, the Shadow Man says. I told you no salt, yet you put salt in your beer. That is the opposite of listening.
That's what they said in the army right before they kicked me out,
Chet says. The Shadow Man shakes his head and pours another beer. Drink this one, Chester, the Shadow Man says.
I'm all full,
Chet says and bats his belly. He winces and grunts as a sharp pain pules through his rib. Drink, the Shadow Man says, or I tear your right arm off and feed it to Billy's little shit over there.
Arm!
The little girl crows.
Shut up now, sweetheart.
Billy's wife says, then smacks the little girl across the cheek.
I'm good,
Chet says. Yes, that's the problem, the Shadow Man says. A little too good, I think. Chet frowns at the Shadow Man.
What does that mean?
It means instead of having you listen, I think I'll have you talk, the Shadow Man says. But first, we need some music. Leo, can you take care of that?
Leo?
Chet asks.
Have you seen what happened to...
Before Chet can finish, the sound of broken glass and plastic mixes with a wet sucking noise. Chet slowly pivots on his bar stool and stares in horror at the dark corner of the bar. The shattered jukebox as well as the shredded, eviscerated, and mostly consumed corpse that used to be Leo, are slowly merging into one monstrosity of plastic, glass, flesh, and bone. When finished being assembled into an abomination, Juke Leo lurches its way out into the center of the bar, then plops down onto its haunches or whatever. It's impossible to tell where Leo ends and the jukebox begins.
Request!
Juke Leo asks, its voice a squawk of musical notes and horrific pleas for the pain to stop, all rolled into a tone of subservience and regret.
Tammy Wynette!
Billy shouts. No, 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 the Shadow Man says. I'm thinking something a little more subdued. He snaps his fingers and Juke Leo screams. Then music fills the bar's speakers. Chet sits upright, ignoring the pain in his rib.
I know this song,
Chet says. Yes, you knew, the Shadow Man says and slides the full glass of beer to Chet. Drink,
I'd rather have champagne.
Chet says, then frowns.
Why'd I say that?
I don't know, Chester. Why did you say that? The Shadow Man replies and taps the glass with a long, sharp fingernail. How about you drink and find out? It is the champagne of beers, after all.
No,
Chet says.
I shouldn't drink. Since when does a drunk not drink?
Billy shouts. Juke Leo chuckles and cries.
This song is from something.
Chet says.
I know it.
Do you now? The Shadow Man says. He leans forward, his elbows on the bar, his chin resting in his hands. Why don't you tell me all about it, Chester?
I can't.
Chet says and shakes his head.
No, I shouldn't.
You should, the Shadow Man says. Unburden yourself. One hand moves from his chin and slowly reaches for the glass of beer. The hand slides the beer an inch closer to Chet. Then it slides it another inch. But you should drink first, the Shadow Man says.
Drink, drink!
The little girl says.
I said shut up, sweetie.
Billy's wife says.
Billy, please shut her up.
Billy rips the little girl's head off and throws it toward the bar. The hand the Shadow Man had been using to inch the beer closer to Chet shoots up into the air and catches the little girl's head. Then it sets it down on the bar facing Chet.
Drink, you fucking drunk bitch!
The head says.
Fuck!
Chet shouts and shoves himself up from the bar stool. The Shadow Man's other hand grabs Chet by the shoulder and forces him back into the stool. Hush now, the Shadow Man says to the little girl's head. Or it's the blunder with you.
Fuck!
Chet says, his eyes straying to the old and dusty blender sitting behind the bar. Just one sip, the Shadow Man says to Chet. That's all I ask. Just one sip, and then we can talk and you can tell me all about yourself. An echo fills Chet's head. Tell me all about yourself, is the refrain he hears over and over. What's wrong, Chester? The Shadow Man asks, pushing up from the bar. You're getting that look in your eyes. I do not like that look, Chester. Whatever you are thinking about, stop it right now. Tell me about yourself, continues to echo in Chet's head. Then it's joined by, we need to get to know each other if you're going to stay here.
I'm not staying here.
Chet says out loud.
Motherfucker!
The Shadow Man shouts.
Well, this sucks balls.
Billy says and gets up from his table.
We almost had him.
Billy's wife says.
I blame Leo.
The little girl's head says.
Fuck you!
Juke Leo replies, his voice filled with plastic and bile. Chet looks around in disbelief. Billy and his skinless wife are walking toward the front door. Don't forget to take this, the Shadow Man says, and throws them the little girl's head. We'll reset in 15.
Got it.
Billy says as he catches the head and opens the door for his skinless wife.
That's a fucking hard 15, William.
The Shadow Man yells.
Not 20, not 25, fucking 15. I heard you.
Billy yells as he walks out of the bar.
What is happening?
Chet asks. Fuck off, Chester, the Shadow Man says. You are nothing but a pain in my ass.
A little help?
Juke Leo calls out. Right, yeah, the Shadow Man says and snaps his fingers. Juke Leo is torn apart into a million different pieces, Then all of the pieces slam together, leaving a repaired jukebox and a repaired Leo in the middle of the bar.
Any notes?
Leo asks the Shadow Man. Leo lifts his arms over his head and stretches, then twists from side to side.
Because I have one. Billy gets to be the fucking jukebox next time.
I don't understand.
Chet says.
You fucking would if you drink the fucking beer.
The Shadow Man yells.
Without the fucking salt.
Leo adds.
That.
The Shadow Man says and jabs a finger at Chet.
No fucking salt next time. I don't really like salt in my beer.
Chet says, frowning.
Of course you don't.
The Shadow Man yells.
No one does. It's fucking weird. People who do that are fucking weird. So stop it.
I don't know.
Leo says as he comes around the bar.
I liked salt in my beer before I moved here.
Moved here? Is that what you're calling it? The Shadow Man asks. Leo shrugs. You're a fucking little weasel. The Shadow Man says, then sneers at Chet. You too, asshole. A fucking little weasel making everything harder than it has to be. The Shadow Man looks up at the ceiling.
You hear that, fuckheads?
He yells.
You're just making this harder than it has to be. I know you can hear me. I know you can see me. You think we aren't aware of your fucking technology up there?
The Shadow Man uses air quotes when he says technology.
Where do you think the idea for television came from?
The Shadow Man continues yelling.
Us, you fucks! So keep watching while I fuck your guy up here.
Chet looks up at the ceiling, then glances at Leo.
Who is he talking to?
Chet asks.
Screw you, bitch!
Leo says.
Don't act like we're friends. We're not.
We've known each other since high school, Leo.
Chet says.
Are you fucking joking with that shit?
Leo asks, then laughs.
I never laid eyes on you until yesterday, dipshit.
Chet grunts and rubs his face.
No, that's not right. I was at your first wedding.
Whatever.
Leo says and sighs.
Is the 15 up yet? Can we get this reset started?
Sounds good. The Shadow Man replies and snaps his fingers. Thunder and lightning rage over the bar that sits just 3 miles past the county line, out on rural Highway 7. The parking lot is gravel. The paint is chipped and missing from most of the walls. A neon sign flickers off and on, barely bright enough to fight the cloudy gloom. A beater pickup truck sits in the parking lot, which is quickly turning from gravel to a mud puddle with rocks in it. High above, deep in the clouds, a dog howls with fear. Inside the bar, the TV blares the news headlines silently as old country classics echo out of the tinny speakers of the ancient jukebox in the corner of the bar. A lone man, haggard and mean-looking, sits at the bar sipping whiskey from the bottom of the well, while the bartender leans his back to the bar and studies the news scroll running across the silent TV.
Science finds hell,
the bartender says, echoing what the news scroll is reporting.
How's that even possible?
My thoughts exactly,
the lone man says.
It's like a vegetarian stumbling across a barbecue joint. So what? Ain't nothing gonna come of it because...
The lone man pauses. The bartender looks at him.
Something wrong?
The bartender asks. The lone man looks down at his glass and shakes his head.
I don't know,
the lone man says.
Ready to switch to beer?
The bartender asks. He doesn't wait for an answer and goes to the tap and pours a glass, then sets it in front of the lone man.
Here you go, on the house.
Wow, Leo, thanks,
the lone man says.
No problem, Chet,
Leo replies.
Unfortunately, we're out of salt.
Why would I put salt in my beer?
Chet asks.
Huh? Oh, you wouldn't,
Leo replies.
Fucking shit, Leo!
A shadow yells as it pulls itself away from the wall.
Why'd you even mention salt, huh? Why?
Shit, sorry,
Leo says just before the shadow snaps unseen fingers and Leo explodes into a bloody mist.
Reset!
The shadow screams.
Reset?
Chet asks.
What the fuck has happened?
Thunder and lightning rage over the bar that sits just 3 miles past the county line out on rural Highway 7. The parking lot is gravel. The paint is chipped and missing from most of the walls. A neon sign flickers off and on, barely bright enough to fight the cloudy gloom. A beater pickup truck sits in the parking lot, which is quickly turning from gravel to a mud puddle with rocks in it. High above, deep in the clouds, a bullfrog croaks. Inside the bar, the TV blares the news headlines silently as old country classics echo out of the tinny speakers of the ancient jukebox in the corner of the bar. A lone man, haggard and mean-looking, sits at the bar sipping whiskey from the bottom of the well, while the bartender leans his back to the bar and studies the news scroll running across the silent TV.
Science finds hell.
The bartender says, echoing what the news scroll is reporting.
How's that even possible?
My thoughts exactly.
The lone man says.
It's like a vegetarian stumbling across a barbecue joint. So what? Ain't nothing gonna come of it because those are two different worlds.
The lone man downs his whiskey and sets the empty glass on the bar, tapping it with a finger.
Fill her up, Leo,
the lone man says.
You sure, Chet?
Leo asks as he wipes a glass with a rag.
Maybe you should switch to beer.
You my mommy now?
Chet snaps.
Fill the glass, Leo.
About that,
Leo says.
Missy has been up my butt about bar tabs this week. I'm gonna need you to pay up first.
Seriously?
Chet responds.
Since when is Missy worried about me paying my tab?
Since you stopped paying your tab,
Leo says.
What the fuck ever?
Chet says, and digs into his jeans pocket. He pulls out a bunch of loose change and wadded up bills and slaps them onto the bar.
Here you go, asshole. Keep the change.
Leo cringes as he counts out the money.
Why's this 5 all wet?
Gross,
he says.
Wet?
Chet asks and looks at the money Leo is counting. He sees the 5 that Leo slips from the bar top and into the till. A red streak is left behind. Leo looks down at the bar, then wipes the red streak away with his rag.
That only covers today's drinks, Chet,
Leo says, pulling Chet's attention away from the bar top.
You have to settle up sometime, you know. Pay your tab in full, not just drink by drink. Tell Missy to bill me,
Chet says. The storm outside gets worse, and the wind nearly rips the door off its hinges as a man yanks it open and then struggles to yank it closed again. Loud plops and croaking can be heard just before he slams the door shut.
Holy fuck! It's literally raining frogs out there!
The man yells.
Have you two seen this shit? On there? Yeah.
Chet says, and points up at the TV where an image of a man being burned at the stake fills the screen.
They say it's raining blood in Cairo.
And the Great Lakes are now filled with piss and shit,
Leo adds.
Damn scientists should have left hell alone,
the huge man says as he walks to the bar and plops down onto a stool.
Give me a picture of High Life, Leo.
No bourbon today, Billy?
Leo asks.
Did I fucking ask for bourbon?
Billy snaps.
A pitcher is what I asked for, and a pitcher is what you'll pour me. Chet will help me finish it. Sticking to the rock gut,
Chet says and lifts his glass.
Beer gives me the shits unless I put salt in it.
The vibe in the bar turns to ice. Chet looks back and forth between Leo and Billy.
What? What'd I say?
Chet asks.
You two are acting like you've seen a ghost or something. What's up? Nothing,
Billy says and laughs a weak laugh.
Just not like you to turn down free beer. Not feeling like mixing booze today,
Chet says.
I'm gonna stick to this shit, thank you.
We're all out of salt anyway,
Leo says.
Motherfucker.
Billy mutters and gets up off his stool and walks out of the bar.
Reset!
A voice roars from the corner of the bar.
Sorry!
Leo yells. The storm outside gets worse, and the wind nearly rips the door off its hinges as a man yanks it open and then struggles to yank it closed again. Loud plops and croaking can be heard just before he slams the door shut.
Holy fuck! It's literally raining frogs out there!
The man yells.
Have you two seen this shit?
Chet sits up straight and whips his head around to look at the man. Then he looks back at Leo, the bartender.
Did you guys just feel that?
Chet asks.
Nope.
Leo says and pours a bourbon, then sets it in front of the bar stool the huge man quickly occupies.
Here you go, Billy.
Thanks, Leo.
Billy says and sighs as he settles his bulk on the stool. He picks up the drink, sips it, then nods at the news scroll on the silent TV hanging behind the bar.
Can you believe that bullshit? Science finds hell. What other lies are the government gonna throw at us next?
The image on the screen is of the aftermath of an earthquake. Hundreds of bloody and broken bodies are littered in the rubble of a demolished city. Then the image switches to a crowd of people throwing stones at a teenage girl, before cutting back to the anchorwoman, reporting on the chaos that has taken over the world.
Science should have left hell alone.
Chet says and finishes his whiskey. He taps the glass.
One more, please, Leo.
Yeah, sorry, Chet, but I'm gonna have to ask you to pay up first.
Leo says.
Missy has been up my butt about bar tabs this week.
Don't sweat it.
Billy says and downs his bourbon.
I'm switching to beer. Pour a pitcher for me and Chet, will you, Leo? You paying?
Leo asks.
I'm paying.
Billy says and claps Chet on the shoulder.
You don't mind, do you, Chet? Never been one to turn down free beer.
Chet replies.
That's a good man.
Billy says and gives Chet's shoulder a squeeze. Leo pours the pitcher and sets it in front of Billy, then places 2 glasses on the bar. Billy pours the beer and slides a full glass to Chet.
Drink up, pal.
Billy says and stares at Chet.
Thanks.
Chet says, then lifts the glass to his lips. Then he sets it back down.
Got any salt, Leo?
No.
Leo says quickly.
What's behind you?
Chet asks, nodding at a dusty salt shaker on the counter right behind Leo.
Sugar.
Leo says.
Looks like salt.
Chet says.
Hand it over.
Leo pauses and looks at Billy. Billy sighs and shrugs.
Here you go.
Leo says, and hands the salt shaker to Chet. Chet pours a healthy dose of salt into his beer, then drinks half the glass before setting it down and frowning at Leo.
I think the tap lines need cleaning.
Chet says.
I'll tell Missy.
Leo replies.
You guys will never guess the day I had it work.
Billy says. He turns on his stool and faces Chet.
You know Amy Everett, right? Big rack and a lazy eye, yeah?
Chet says and sips his beer.
I know who she is. She came into work today with her underwear on the outside of her clothes.
Billy says.
She wearing a G-string?
Leo asks and laughs.
Let me finish the fucking story, Leo.
Billy snaps.
Yeah, Leo. Let him finish the fucking story.
Chet echoes with a laugh.
Fuck you guys.
Leo says, then goes over to the small dishwasher and pulls a rack of clean glasses out of it.
I'll just be over here working. You two have fun.
You're a bartender.
Chet says.
It's your job, dumbass. Can I finish my story?
Billy asks.
You barely started it.
Chet says.
Go ahead. So, anyway, she comes in with her underwear on the outside of her clothes like nothing is wrong.
Billy says.
And I forgot to mention, she was 3 hours late. Crazy shit is happening these days.
Chet says, and tips his glass up at the silent TV, showing drone footage of a mob with pitchforks and torches in hand, chasing a bunch of stockbrokers down Wall Street.
You can say that again.
Billy says.
So, Amy comes in and sits down at her desk. I don't know who called him, but soon, Hal comes out of his office and marches straight over to Amy's desk, demanding to know what she thinks she's up to.
Reasonable question considering.
Leo says.
I got a question.
Chet says.
Yeah, what's that?
Billy asks.
Was she actually wearing a G-string like Leo asked? 'Cause I've seen that ass of hers around town, and I'd never seen no panty lines. Yeah, she was!
Billy exclaims. The 3 men laugh and laugh.
Anyway, Hal is pissed off and demanding to know what Amy thinks she's doing.
Billy says.
And do you know what Amy does? Do tell.
Chet says.
She picks up her stapler and throws it right in his face.
Billy says.
Breaks his fucking nose right there.
Jesus.
Leo says.
Is Hal all right?
I ain't finished.
Billy says.
Pour me another first.
Chet says after finishing his beer. Billy does so. Chet picks up the salt and pours the rest of the shaker into the beer, then takes a drink.
Ah, that's the stuff. Son of a bitch.
Billy mutters under his breath.
What's that?
Chet asks.
I said then the bitch stands up and grabs Hal by the hair and slams his head against the corner of her desk over and over and over until his skull is pulp.
Billy says. Chet pauses as he's about to sip his beer.
I assume Hal ain't all right then.
Chet says.
Fuck no, he's not all right.
Billy says.
The guy is dead as a doornail.
Holy shit!
Leo says.
Did someone call the police?
We tried, but 911 is down.
Billy says. He nods up at the TV and at the violence and depravity that is being shown.
And I bet it just ain't around here. Looks like no one is coming to save the world now. Makes sense.
Chet says.
This is what happens when you fuck around and find hell. No truer words have been spoken.
Billy says.
So what happened?
Leo asks.
Did she attack anyone else?
No. She sat down and got to work.
Billy says.
We all stared at her. Then some folks left. I stuck around because I had a report due. You stuck around?
Chet asks.
Why the fuck would you do that? Oh, I left a mess at home that morning that I didn't want to deal with yet.
Billy says.
I didn't clock out until it started raining frogs.
Billy smiles as Chet finishes his beer.
Or you another?
Billy says.
Don't mind if I do.
Chet says.
Gonna need more salt though.
Leo and Billy share a look.
I'll check in the back.
Leo says, and steps out from behind the bar and walks to a door against the far wall.
Drink up while he gets the salt.
Billy says and pushes the fresh glass of beer over to Chet.
I'll wait.
Chet says.
The beer is really off. I don't know how you're drinking it. I haven't noticed anything.
Billy says and takes a drink.
Tastes fine to me. Not to me.
Chet says.
I'll wait for the salt.
Billy nods and sips his beer.
So, you left some sort of mess at your house?
Chet asks.
What kind of mess do you leave that makes you want to stay at work with a crazy woman? Funny you should ask.
Billy says.
Let me tell you all about it.
The general rubs his face as he stares up at the blank monitors bolted to the walls of the control room.
He's holding up still,
the general says when he's finished rubbing his face. He places his hat back on his head and looks at the scientist standing next to him.
How long has he been down there now, Dr. Grieg?
84 hours.
Dr. Grieg replies.
His vessel pierced the seventh circle of hell after 60 hours.
He's been in this one circle for 24 hours?
The general asks.
Yes, General.
Dr. Grieg says.
He's the only pilot that's made it even remotely this far. The others were lost within a matter of 2 or 3.
Yes, I know the stats, Doctor.
The general says.
Tell me something I don't know. Like, how are we even seeing this bar scene? It can't be real, so how in the heck...
The general clears his throat.
I mean, how in the heck are we seeing what he's seeing?
To be honest, we don't really know, sir.
Dr. Grieg says.
We have theories.
We need more than goddamn theories,
the general shouts.
We need answers. We finally found hell, and we need to know everything about it.
They're letting us see it,
a woman says from behind the two men.
What do you mean by that, Dr. Lender?
The general asks.
I mean that hell is letting us see what they are showing to Captain Dwyer, General.
Dr. Lender replies.
It's the only explanation.
And who is they?
The general asks.
We believe the parties involved are minor demons and servants of hell that have been tasked with corrupting Captain Dwyer.
Dr. Lender says.
Minor demons of hell?
The general snorts and laughs.
What makes you say that, Doctor?
If I may?
Dr. Lender asks and leans forward, indicating she needs the two men to move.
Please,
the general says, stepping aside. Dr. Lender steps to the control board and types in several commands on a keyboard. The images on the monitors change, becoming almost thermodynamic, but without the weird coloring. Instead, everyone on the monitor, except for Captain Chester Dwyer, is transformed into some sort of monstrosity.
Jesus Christ,
the general says.
Wrong zip code.
Dr. Lunder says.
But yes, Jesus Christ.
The one behind the bar has been identified as Ezekiel.
Dr. Grieg says.
We found an exact likeness in the Catholic Church's database.
It was good of them to share their resources.
Dr. Lunder says.
You say that without knowing what we had to give up to get them to cooperate.
The general says.
And the one sitting next to Captain Dwyer?
William Corvo.
Dr. Grieg says.
That does not sound very demonic.
The general says.
We think he's a human that has risen up the ranks.
Dr. Lunder says.
He's not in the database, but facial recognition pulled him up from the Illinois DMV files. He used to trade commodities in Chicago before he killed everyone in his office, his entire family, and then himself. You may have heard of him.
Why would I have heard of him?
The general asks.
He was the one that hung his family from the holiday decorations for all to see.
Dr. Grieg says.
This was about a decade ago.
That's him?
The general asks.
Was he the man that tied one end of a rope around the chimney and the other end around his neck, then jumped off his roof when the police arrived?
That is him.
Dr. Grieg says.
He also skinned his family alive before stringing them up.
Dr. Lunder says.
His wife, his 4-year-old daughter, and his infant son.
Terrible.
The general says.
No wonder he's in hell.
The general frowns as he looks at the main monitor.
What's happening now?
He asks.
It appears they are arguing over salt again, sir.
Dr. Grieg says.
Captain Dwyer's subconscious must have figured out that salt is a protective agent while in hell.
Amazing.
The general says.
It's unfortunate the other pilots didn't figure that out. Except I do have a question.
Yes, sir?
Dr. Grieg replies.
If salt is protective, then why do they have it in hell?
The general asks.
It's metaphorical, sir.
Dr. Lunder says.
Nothing in hell appears to be real. We believe that's part of the power of the place. It's all an illusion.
The general shakes his head.
Well, I'm glad your team is dealing with this and not me.
The general says.
Keep me updated.
Yes, General.
Dr. Grieg says. Once the general has left the control room, a flood of assistants hurry into the room and sit down at their stations.
All right, people. The presentation to the brass is over.
Dr. Grieg says.
Let's get back to work. Oh shit,
Dr. Lunder says and points up at the monitor.
their boss is back, and he's not happy.
As long as Captain Dwyer holds out and doesn't drink the beer without salt, then he'll be fine.
Dr. Grieg says.
Too late.
An assistant announces.
He just drank the beer without salt.
Everyone stares up at the monitor and waits. Then 3 seconds later, Captain Chester Dwyer stands up from his stool and begins to peel the skin off his face with his fingernails. He scrapes and rips until his skin hangs in shreds from his chin and jaw.
Damn.
Dr. Lunder says. On the monitor, the Leo demon, the Billy demon, the Shadow Man, and the now lost Captain Dwyer all link arms, then take a bow before staring out at the monitor and flipping everyone off. The monitor goes pitch black. The room holds a collective silence, then Dr. Grieg says,
I'll let the general know. I'll go prep the next pilot.
Dr. Lunder says and laughs.
I do not see what you could possibly find funny in this, Doctor.
Dr. Grieg snaps.
Just something Captain Dwyer said.
Dr. Lunder replies.
This is what happens when you fuck around and find hell.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.